Hit me.
From Studio P in Sausalito, the home of the hit, it's time for...
Succotash.
Yes, Succotash Chats, the original comedy soundcast featuring interviews from comedy... Soundcasters, comedians, comedian soundcasters, and other showbiz folks. And here's your host, internationally recognized Comedy Soundcast Soundcaster, Marc Hershon.
Yes, it's me, Marc Hershon, host and haberdasher for Epi160 of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. It's been a few weeks since we last dropped a sode. Apologies, but life gets busy. Suffice it to say we're back, and we've had a bit of a mixed bag, so it's kind of a half Succotash Clips and half Succotash Chats kind of show this time around. On the clip side, we have a couple of snippets uploaded to us by soundcasters themselves. A new show called Nothing Good, and another newish show from a soundcast called Pretty Gross. Over in the chats department, I've got some interviews left over from the 6th Los Angeles Podcast Festival that took place nearly a month and a half ago in early October. Chris Mancini, one of the co-founders of the LA Podcast Festival, joins me. Jonathan Sadowski and Travis Clark from the Quick Question Soundcast sit down with me. Murray Valeriano of the Road Stories Soundcast, and Chris Gore, that Chris Gore, who stopped by. We did kind of a simulcast. In fact, the interview you're going to hear here has already been heard on his Film Threat Soundcast. In addition, we have a double dose of our Burst o' Durst with political comedian and social commentator Will Durst, and the whole shooting match is brought to you by the good folks at Henderson's Pants. As we often do, let's kick things off with our first Burst o' Durst. This time around, Will Durst digs into the old but new struggle known as class warfare.
Hey guys, Will Durst here with a few choice words about class warfare. Trump owns it, and the Democrats want it back. Democrats love class wars. They understand the concept. To them, it's getting back to the basics, like putting on silk boxers before donning your jodhpurs, which is why the Democrats are attacking GOP attempts to eliminate taxes on the wealthy. The dirty little secret is the public couldn't care less. Average Americans are all in favor of extending perks to the rich because they know it's only a matter of time before they're raking in the gazillion dollars worth of tax breaks when they become rich, which should be any day now. So when the administration announces we have to stimulate the rich, the lower and middle classes just nod their heads and repeat, yep, that's me someday. Rather than get bogged down in sociological semantics, we here at Durstco have unearthed other ways to accomplish the same sort of thing, only cheaper. So let's do our best to help out with a little piece we like to call Cheaper Ways to Stimulate the Rich. Torches, pitchforks, crowbars, and hot lead enemas. Bracing slaps in the face from stockholders before every corporate board meeting. Instead of Botox injections, force the rich to take their botulism toxin orally. Subdermal cayenne pepper time-release sinus implants. Subliminal messages while they sleep. I'm ruining the world. My children hate me. Social ownership of the means of production. Amphetamine patches. What the hell? Amphetamine mesh undershirts. Ankle-tethered, rabies-infested Norwegian rats. All new BMWs equipped with factory-installed Galaxy 7 in glove compartment nestled in a pile of kerosene-soaked rags. Replace all those pink, blue, and yellow packages of artificial sweeteners with Pop Rocks. And finally, remote-controlled cattle prod suppositories. For Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast, I'm Will Durst. Not yet rich, but fingers crossed.
We will hit a second Burst o' Durst before this episode is over, mark my words. And if you live in the San Francisco area or will be in the Bay Area anytime through the end of the year, his one-man show called Durst Case Scenario has been extended at the Marsh Theater. You can check out his home site for more information, willdurst.com. It's just that easy. Before we get further into this episode, I wanted to let you know that Succotash will be having the first live episode we've done since this year's SF Sketchfest. It's going to be at next year's SF Sketchfest on Sunday, January 14th, 5:30 p.m. at Piano Fight in downtown San Francisco. I'm not sure which guests we're going to have yet, waiting to see who's in town that weekend, but I will tell you this. It may be the last episode of Succotash, at least in its current form. That's all I'm going to say. Next up, let's spend a few minutes with Chris Mancini, not only a Podfest co-founder, but co-host of the Comedy Film Nerd Soundcast and author of a new graphic novel that he will update us on in this little chat. Apologies, by the way, for the extraneous noise. The podcast lab this year was more of an experiment in audio terror, with atrocious acoustics making it a little difficult to chat things up. All right, Chris Mancini, here we are.
Great to be back.
Podcast Lab at LA Podfest number 6.
Yes, this is number 6. 6 years the charm. 5th year was not the charm. So this is what we call our recovery year, where we took a beating last year, but this year everything is better. Sponsorship is up, attendance is up. Got some great shows, so we're back and better than ever.
Excellent. Well, the new location here at the old location, that
Yes.
is the Biltmore's been here probably longer than any other place you guys have been in.
Oh, for sure. This is like old school Hollywood. That's what
Yeah.
we really like about it. It's really cool.
The amenities are much nicer. Everything seems much more connected in terms of being able to get to all the rooms quickly. And
Yeah, I mean, the layout's a little confusing because we're spread out a little bit, but once you kind of get the rhythm down and find out where everything is, it's people are figuring it out.
That's cool.
So, and it's one of the reasons is it's such a big hotel that there's other events going on too. And also only certain rooms were available for this weekend. So
Oh,
we kind of
really?
so we kind of had to pick and choose which weekends and where and what was available. So this is how it worked out. We got the rooms we wanted for this weekend. They're just a little spread out from each other.
So
So we're adding more signs, so that'll help.
So, after last year, was there a doubt you guys would even be able to put this one on this year?
There was definitely a doubt, but also it put us in so much debt. I mean, the partners, we put in a lot of our own money, like tens of thousands of dollars, just to be able to continue doing it. I mean, that's a real punch in the face, is really when you work really hard on something, not only for free, but then end up putting money in. So this year we needed to get that money back and just show that the festival is viable. So we took a long, hard look at everything. It was like our budget, our location, our talent, and we came up with kind of like LA Podfest 2.0, which is what this year is. We added a whole Podcast Pro section, and that's been very successful. We've seen the attendance for that just really jump. Like right now, there's a panel on stats being done by Lipson, and it's standing room only. I mean,
Really?
you can't even get in there right now. So we're seeing that there's a dual track of people that want to come to LA Podfest. Ones that want to learn about podcasting, and ones that want to come and just see the shows. And now there is some overlap for that, for sure. There's a lot of people who are our podcasters who go to the panels, hang out in the lab, and then go see some shows at night. So we want to cater to everybody and kind of have an all-inclusive umbrella for everything and all things podcasting.
Well, that's great, because in past years there's certainly been a lot of podcasters that show up, and it is a crossover audience. But I think there was, I don't know if disappointment was the right word, but I think they were expecting to find more of the sort of Podcast Pro approach. You know, I want to get into this, or I'm doing this.
There was definitely a couple of, there's some feedback that we got, if you had panels all day, I would have stayed all day.
Really?
So, and that's what we did this year. It's like there's panels all day. They don't go into the night, but they start early. We start at noon, and they go till 6. I mean, that's a strong panel.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Schedule, especially when there's dual tracks. So
I was happy to be asked to do a couple of them. That's
we're happy to have you. And one of the ones that kicked it off was how to start your podcast.
Yes,
and that was. A really packed panel, and we had the thing I like about it too is the podcast fans and the podcasters are just so easygoing and polite. Like I've never seen a Q&A where someone asks a question, we answer it, then everyone says thank you afterwards. Every time we answered a question, literally someone said, thank you.
Yeah,
like,
very polite.
Yes.
Very polite. And we didn't have an audience mic for our panel yesterday, and that first gentleman wanted to help us out, so it was so loud we didn't need a microphone.
No, we did not. They could hear him in the other panel room.
But you said attendance is up, and I think I certainly have seen that just in the hallways. It's just a lot of people milling around.
A lot of people don't want it to end. A lot of people have said, "Look, I've made friends here. I come here every year. It really means a lot to me. Please don't end it." And and we want to keep it going. So I will say this: it's going in the right direction. We're really, it's very promising. It looks like we will continue to do it.
Oh, that's great.
So,
and there's even in the podcast lab here, there's this camaraderie because all these people have come every year.
Yes,
it's amazing. And
you set up your corner, you find it, and you plant.
That's
and you're
right.
like, this is it. This is the Succotash corner.
That's right. But last year when I left early the third day, and there was no food in the podcast lab, so I went to the drugstore across the street and bought a bunch of Halloween candy and put it out. And then this year when I got here, one of the other podcasters had already done that. There's a huge basket of candy over there that's provided by her.
Yeah, and it was like the podcasters are actually helping, fill and brand the lab.
Yeah.
So that was really nice, and we like to see that too. We always like to see that podcasters giving stuff to other podcasters.
So there's no live stream this year. Will people be able to hear the results of what's happened here? Will it be available online at some point?
It will not. No.
Oh,
This is really a live-only event this year. We are recording the panels, but I don't know if we're going to release them or not. It might be something where we just kind of keep it like what you had to be here for. Now, a live stream is something that we'll look into in the future if we can add it, if we have a sponsor.
Yeah.
It has to make sense. I think one of the problems is people are so used to getting content for free on the internet, especially video.
Yes.
The people that showed up for the live stream were not the numbers that we had expected. So it was another thing that cost us money.
Sure.
In the end, if we don't have a sponsor, if we don't have it covered, and if we don't have the ticket sales to justify it, it's not something that we would continue doing. But again, there's no definitive answer. Like, no, we'll never do it again, or yes, we're definitely doing it again. We'll look at it, and if we get a sponsor, we'll bring it back, or maybe we'll do a pre-order where, if you want the live stream, you have to pre-order it now. And if we get to a certain number where it makes sense, then we'll do it.
Well, it's almost like, that you started this event with a Kickstarter. You could do a Kickstarter for the live stream.
That's exactly what we would do.
If we hit that number.
If we might just kickstart the live stream and say, look, if you guys want it, this is the number we have to hit for it to be viable.
Yeah.
And I will say this, it was a lot of foreign sales. Like Australia really showed up for the live stream. It was America that really where the ticket sales were down.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I admire the passion that you and the other organizers have to keep the thing going. And also, this is still, even though now we've had podcasting for almost 20 years, but it's still this emerging, growing, not just entertainment field, but the technology keeps changing.
Yes.
And so you guys are willing to do that, to say, well, let's try the live stream thing. And if it doesn't work, then you took a hit on it, but you went out there and you tried it. Mm-hmm. And that takes passion. That isn't just, let's just try and make a bunch of money off this thing.
Right.
We're going to take a chance here and see if this works. If it doesn't work, we may end up eating it. But it doesn't. You weren't afraid to go, let's do this another year.
Exactly. We definitely we want to try new things. The other thing too is we were the first podcast festival. We pioneered a lot of this stuff here. And you could see it in other festivals. People came here, saw what we were doing, and then applied it to other places.
Yes, very, very close in the timeline.
Yes. There's another thing that hurt us last year. Another giant corporate festival dumped right in our laps a month later. We didn't have that this year, so that certainly helped. Like I said, everything moved in the right direction this year.
Yeah.
But one of the things we've always wanted to do is try different things. Like last night, we had a movie screening at 11, and a lot of people showed up for it. Graham and I, for Comedy Film Arts, we curated it. We showed a really funny action comedy called Killing Gunther. And it's something we would look into expanding for sure, more movie screenings.
The guy that I'm staying with, a buddy of mine, is actually the producer of Killing Gunther.
Oh, really? Oh,
and he was surprised to find out that they were showing it last night.
He didn't know.
He didn't know. He said, they're trying to show it, before it comes out in some places where there's like a niche audience they think will really enjoy it. So I hope it went over well.
It was late. So I didn't stay to watch the entire audience reaction. I had seen the movie before as a screener, and but as soon as the movie started, people were laughing. So we knew it was.
It's got a great cast.
Yeah,
so.
and it's a funny movie. It's a really well put together action comedy. Actually, it's more of a comedy action.
Yes.
The comedy came first, which is good, and it was structured in a really nice way. So check that out when it comes out on video.
That's great. I will let you go. I know it's a busy time, but thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
And,
glad to always have you here, Mark.
It's a pleasure to come back and help you guys out this year.
Yes.
I was happy to be part of the...
we're happy to have you as part of Podcast Pros.
Thank you.
Now you don't have to buy a ticket.
Yay! Yeah. All right. Well, great. We'll catch up with you along the way in the next couple days while the festival is still going.
Great.
And continued success with. You've got your. We should talk about this. You've got your graphic novel that's coming together.
Yeah, it is coming together really nicely. It's called Long Ago and Far Away. It was kickstarted last year, but it's a massive undertaking. So it's going to be about 180 some pages.
Well, the artwork is looking great because
yes.
I get the Kickstarter updates and it's looking terrific.
We're doing updates every month. One big announcement is that Mark Waid, the comic book writer, is going to be doing a foreword to the book.
Oh, fantastic!
So we'll be putting it together. The goal is to get it all together, get it laid out, and then to have a small press pick it up and then buy those copies from the small press and then send out the Kickstarter rewards that way.
That's great.
Because from what I've been talking to a lot of different comic book creators, and this is not a world that I'm 100% familiar with, so it's new to me, is that there's a lot of small presses that will pick up a finished book and not take the rights to anything. Like they keep creator-owned content, which is so refreshing because, any type of deal, you're like, oh, you're giving away your rights or whatever. And what they do is they take their percentage off the top from publishing it, but you retain the rights. And it's a perfect thing for comic book creators. They don't pay advances or anything, but if the book's already done, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So we're really excited about it. If you guys want to learn a little bit more about it, you can actually, the Kickstarter page is still up. You could go look up Long Ago and Far Away and see the welcome video, and then you could download the first chapter. That's still available.
Yeah. That's great. And then Comedy Film Nerd still going strong.
Comedy Film Nerd still going strong, and launched the new podcast, Conversations from the Abyss.
Oh, yeah. How is that going?
It's going really well. It's a scripted Twilight Zone horror podcast, and people have been saying it's been creeping them out, which has been good. And I'm borrowing cast from Thrilling Adventure Hour and Welcome to Night Vale, so it'll be a lot of people that the fans of those shows are familiar with already.
That's terrific.
But basically, I'm having comedians do creepy things.
Excellent. Well, that sounds great, Chris. And I hope the rest of the festival continues to be enough of a success that we see year 7.
Yes, we hope so as well. Well, thanks, Mark. This is always a pleasure.
Thank you, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right, acoustics in that room aside, the new location this year was pretty cool. Once you figured out where everything was and in and around the other events going on that weekend. And Chris is a great guy. I'm sure he was the one chiefly responsible for me being asked to host 2 of the panels and be a guest on a 3rd panel at this last year's last podcast festival. So thank you, Chris. And be sure to catch him and Graham Elwood, his co-host, also another co-founder of the podcast festival, with their Comedy Film Nerds show over at comedyfilmnerds.com. Time to grab a hunk of some new comedy podcast goodness. We heard from the Nothing's Good Soundcast when a guy named Adam directly uploaded their premiere episode to our hightail.com link with this note, quote, "Here's the first episode of my podcast. It's a storytelling podcast about messed up things that have happened to you. Use whatever you like from it," unquote. There's been about a half a dozen episodes since the one this clip came from. This one's entitled Slimy Peaches. And so far, there's not a whole lot of information on their home site. The About link reads, quote, "Stories of failure and regret by the world's foremost regrettable failures. A storytelling podcast of things gone awry," unquote. All right, well, with that in mind, here we go.
would play that game.
That's meta.
But not to make you guys like actually take the drive. I would play that game before, like the one time Thomas the Red, the Viking, he was talking about going to this open mic, and he was like, it was in Binghamton, and it's a good hour drive. And I was like, yeah, dude, I'll just come grab you. I was like, you want to meet somewhere? He's like, yeah, where should we meet? And I was like, the Vape Boss, Dixon City, the vape shop.
Okay.
He's like, all right, I'm going to get dressed and I'll meet in 20 minutes. I was like, all right, text me before you leave. Like, this is all going on in their little group chat. He texts me, he's like, all right, man, I'm ready to go. And I was like, I was just kidding. I can't go out. It's like,
Oh man, he was
such
probably
a dick move. That fucking,
he loved it. That's how I know he has
expensive too. It cost like $4.
This was before that.
No, I'm just fucking with him.
This is
spent
before the full on.
a fortune in blade oil.
That's a good conversation to have. You guys have heard of an MRE before, right?
Yes.
What's that?
Yeah.
Those like meals that last for 10 years?
A meal that's ready to eat?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what MRE stands for.
No, I get it.
I was around these things my whole entire life.
Okay.
Because my father was in the military. And the fucking food in them was awesome. I mean, they even had little tiny bottles of Tabasco sauce.
I have a funny story about one of those bottles.
So go for it.
No, you first.
Okay. Well, it's not about the bottle, but...
We'll come back to it.
Is this going to be the same way as like when you got your pecker touched? It's like going to be...
What, gold?
No. That's not what I don't mean like that.
That was my favorite story.
I mean...
Stories of me being the dumbest kid? No. Possibly, yeah.
I was trying to tie that into like that bottle it being inserted. I don't know. Who knows? I'm an idiot. But anyway, these MREs.
Right.
With the little tiny salts or whatever. They had a food warmer thing in them. Did you guys ever know that? It was like a
like the little metal thing that you unfolded.
Yeah. You fold it up and it would actually warm your fucking food. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if you knew like the power of those fucking things. Mm-mm. You could actually take a 16-ounce bottle and then you fill it up about a fifth of the way with water. Mm-hmm. And you put that thing in there and then you close it. And the best one to use would be like a plastic, like those hard plastic ones, like the Pepsi or whatever the fuck.
Okay.
Anyway, and then you throw that in there, you shake it up, toss it, and you run away as fast as you fucking can. Okay. And then it just makes the loudest noise you've ever heard. I mean, it sounds like if you set one of those things,
it expands the bottle and
it expands the bottle, and the popping of it is just a massive fucking loud bang.
What does like the fuel that you throw into it?
The warmer itself. Like
okay.
that foil warmer thing.
Right.
You put it in there.
Oh, okay.
And like, I mean, I'm not going to turn this into a Bill Nye episode. I can't do the chemical
right
compounds.
now, though, because I don't know what the fuck is going on.
It heats up the water.
You can YouTube
the water expands when it's heated.
B. Ryan, the science guy.
B. Ryan. Nice. Dude, you crushed it. You hit like 4 already. Good on you.
Well, thank you.
That's the name of this podcast. B. Ryan.
For the people at home, Ted is folding into
he's literally folded himself up into luggage.
Sorry, too much praise.
I'm not gonna.
I still think you're a dick. Don't worry. It's cool. All
right, good.
It's cool.
As long as that's intact, because
nothing's changed.
Okay, perfect.
There's a taste of Nothing's Good. The first episode is an hour and 15 minutes of pretty much that. And although you hear a few first names and it seems like some of the guys are comedians, there isn't a whole lot of identifying going on, at least in this kickoff show. I dig the samba music in between bits. That's pretty awesome. Check out the show at nothingsgood.libsyn.com/website. They're also on podcasts at Apple. They're on, I think they're on Stitcher. They're probably on SoundCloud. And just check them out. Again, that's Nothing's Good. And guys, thanks for uploading. your podcast. If you're a podcaster, a comedy podcaster, would like to upload your clip to us, an MP3 or WAV clip is just fine. Listen at the end of the show. Our announcer, Bill Haywatt, will give you the address to upload your link directly to us, or me or our associate producer, Tyson Sainer, may just happen to find you out there in the Soundcast wilderness. All right, I got a chance to sit down in the podcast lab on the last day of the podcast festival with friend of Succotash and friend in real life, Travis Clark, who is there with his new Soundcast partner, Jonathan Sadowski. They have a show that's been going a few months now called Quick Question, and we get into that and more right now. All right, so my first actual podcast interview since I've been here on Friday.
What?
By the way, because the sound quality in this room is so horrible.
Amazing.
The only other person I interviewed was Chris Mancini, one of the organizers of the podcast.
Well, Mark, I guess all we have to say is you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're here to echo and to help.
Thank you. I have Jonathan Sadowski and I have Travis Clark, the hosts of the brand new, well, relatively new Soundcast called Quick Question.
Yes, sir.
And, of course, if you want to hear Travis Clark on a previous episode, you can listen to the one just before this one.
I'm like I can't stop being on Succotash.
You're like the ghost of Succotash.
That's amazing.
And again, fantastic sound quality, because that was recorded in my car driving down I-5 from a speakerphone into this very Zoom recorder I'm using.
It's not about the quality, it's about the
quantity.
It's about the quantity.
Exactly. So the more times he's been on, the better he actually sounds. So it's great to talk. I talked to you guys the other night at the big party they had.
On the roof. Real rager.
They have never had a Podfest party on the 42nd floor of a building.
You shouldn't let that many podcasters that high.
No.
Where they could jump. It's a bad idea.
But you guys just did your live show.
Yeah.
How'd that go down?
We did. You know, it was an historic event for Quick Q Pod. We had a baker's dozen of people, a deafening crowd screaming at us.
Oh, wow.
Small but mighty. Like they were very on board.
They were very. We also had a celebrity guest, celebrity chef Michael Voltaggio as our guest. It was good, and he's kind of a bro, so it's like it was.
Yeah.
It was very.
It's just three dudes hanging out.
Three dudes hanging out in a couple chairs.
You know, a podcast.
Three dudes hanging out in a couple chairs.
Yeah. Sounds like you got a new title, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's Quick Question. I mean, come on. It has alliteration. But
No, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Now, that's the first time you guys have done live. I mean,
First time we did live, and first time we had a guest.
So we popped two cherries with that.
Wow, nice.
So we got that out of the way.
Nice. So because your interaction on...
Next time will last longer.
We promise.
It wasn't them, it was you. Yeah. But so you guys have gotten this great chemistry, because I've heard just, the shows you've done so far, but what was like translating that chemistry to the live stage?
I tried to keep it to, since we all knew each other, because I know Volt through Sadowski, and we've all hung out before, so it wasn't having to get to know our guest for the first time.
Yeah.
The kind of ease between Jonathan and I is what made the show work, so I knew that would be there even in a live setting. And it's just kind of knowing what each of our strengths were, and just kind of letting, he kind of led the charge in the beginning. He was kind of, I won't say talking too much, but talking more than I was.
And I was talking too much.
I mean, it's all right.
You guys still do this dance. It's cute. Or you don't want to offend the other person.
We're still in our first year of marriage. Technically, still in our honeymoon phase.
I'm waiting to hear the show. That goes
where it
off
breaks.
the rails.
You know what, Travis? Just suck my dirty poop.
You don't have to beep yourself.
Okay, great.
No, that's just how he talks.
I got hypnotized when I was in high school, and I can't swear.
Your standards and practices.
My mom was worried about my vernacular when I was growing up, and she got a hypnotist. To this day, I can't swear.
Personal standards and practices.
I know, right? I'm my own HR.
I think it translated pretty good. It was interesting to go from what would make the two of us laugh and what would make things laugh in the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would coincide, and sometimes they would not. And so that's
our highbrow humor often floated above the head of our audience.
Yeah.
That's
one of my
funny.
favorite moments is when I made a joke and just saw my wife Brandy sitting there and just giving me a nod like, no, it was funny. And the rest of the room was silent. Like it was a real no, you're funny, honey. Like it was, but it was endearing. Like
sweet.
I actually found it. I actually made me laugh. So I thought thought it was a pretty easy transition for us to get in front of an audience.
Yeah.
I mean, we still haven't been in front of an audience.
I mean, my whole theory on podcasts is, you can't perform differently when you're in front of an audience because technically the podcast isn't for an audience, or like a live audience. It's for people to listen to.
That's right.
So you can't change it up. You got to do the same thing you've been doing, the same thing. You got to perform the way that people like you to perform. There's a reason why people listen to the podcast. You can't change it up just because now you're live.
I've done 2 live versions. One at the lab space next to the Improv, and one up in San Francisco for Sketchfest last year. And I think the first one, I had Dana Carvey as a guest. The one at the Improv, we had 7 people in the audience. And then
it's so funny the way that works.
The one at Sketchfest, we had 7 people in the audience, and we had 3 guests. And to me, as I said, this is like doing my podcast with a few people looking in the window of my house.
Right.
Basically. Yeah. And they're because they're a podcast audience coming to watch a live podcast, they don't even really respond that much.
Right.
Because they're used to hearing it in their earbuds.
Yeah. I mean, our room didn't really have like the theater lighting. Like it was just all bright.
Yeah.
So you could see when people were checking their phone, which is hurt a little more than I planned.
No one left.
That's true. Everyone stayed.
No one left. We had a 100% retention.
One of the other interesting dynamics of this year's Podfest is for the first time that I can remember, and I haven't been to a lot of the showrooms, but I'm hearing kind of the same thing from the other people I've talked to, that the turnout hasn't been that great. I mean,
it's been smaller, right?
It's
this
small,
year, yeah.
But I've been on these panels, and the panels are getting huge crowds.
Weird.
I've had like 50 people for the 3 panels I've been on. 50
Wow.
people each one.
So, we went to a few in like some of the bigger spaces, and it was just like half full.
Yeah.
Well, I think so too. The rooms are enormous.
Yeah, they're massive.
But there's also a lot of podcasters here, and so they want to come learn stuff as opposed to going to hear a podcast.
Right.
I think. I mean, I can't tell.
It's still such a weird animal. It's such a personal product that people ingest. Like it's like even a TV show. A lot of those are filmed in front of the live audience. You can get that kind of thing. These things, it's like they're made to be like with headphones on or to do while you're driving or doing something
it's
else.
Very personal.
Yeah, so it becomes like a weird thing to try and find a live audience for. But
that would have been fun. If we handed out headphones to everybody as they walked in.
Yes.
And we spoke into headphones.
And we had no idea what they were actually listening to.
They didn't have to be plugged in. Just earbuds just dangling.
Just dangling. Just to make them feel like they're at home,
Yeah, it's a great idea. I love that.
Next time.
And then they can keep it for when they leave.
Yes. Right.
So
It's
have
a
a
little
little case says quick question on it.
Just little earbuds.
Yeah.
God
Look
damn
at
it.
us.
What was it? Day late and a dollar short.
Technically, I think we still have the room.
No! Come back!
We have an idea for a present that we'd give you if we had time to make it.
It's amazing.
It's interesting, that idea of people having this personal experience and how much they can express themselves. Because I was listening to what podcast? David Feldman was a guest on Fitzdog.
Okay.
And it was
Greg Fitzsimmons'
podcast, and it was the day before Feldman was going to divorce court. And he'd been married for like 25 or 30 years, and he was so bitter. And it was fucking hilarious. I mean, it was just. I mean, he wasn't being precious about it. He was making it into humor.
Interesting.
But it was just. And I was laughing out loud. I was running in the dark at 5 o'clock in the morning on this mountain trail. I'm going. If somebody saw me right now, they would
think
be
you're crazy.
Genuinely afraid.
That's hysterical.
You're just running, laughing in the dark.
Laughing out loud to apparently nothing. So it is interesting, and you can see people. It's funny if you look around, like in traffic in the morning. I think there are more people beginning to listen to podcasts in that.
Yeah, it's a very good commute. It's very commute driven.
Right. I've seen people chuckling and laughing, and you're not listening to terrestrial radio. I can tell
it's
that.
really funny. It's really funny about the whole how much you're able to chime in and stuff like that. Because one of my good friends, Ben Feldman, he's another actor. He just sent me a text and he goes, "You have no idea how fucking frustrating it is to hear your 2 friends discussing something and you not being able to chime in." You're talking about ghosts or something like that. He's just does not believe in it at all. And he's like, "You have no idea how difficult it is." He's like, "You guys sound stupid," and I can't chime in. It's like, I can't. He's like, I just have to sit there and listen to you.
That's one of the last times I called you was because I heard you on a podcast. I think it was.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't know about the other one. Don't mention it.
How many extra ones you had? It's funny. He told me, I was like, we're like,
It was him and Ben Feldman.
oh, really? Yeah. He's like, he does all these podcasts. He's like, but Jonathan, he goes, you're always the one I come home to. Yeah.
And he goes, well, that makes me feel fucking better.
But that was that thing. He goes, oh, he's talking about something. So I go, I'm going to just call him and say something because I wanted to chime in.
It's amazing. Amazing.
That's very funny. That's very funny.
Yeah, it is fun to see, like, because we'll get those kind of tweets and stuff too from people of like, oh, I'm the only person in my workplace right now laughing and everyone thinks I'm crazy, or, you know, oh, I wanted to talk to you about this, or what do you think about these haunted houses? And, you know, it's funny. It's also funny when people, because podcasting, you know, we're on a delivery schedule of doing one a week, but when people find it, you have no control over it.
That's right.
So people will find stuff. People are finding my old show and asking me questions about something I said 6 years ago. I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what I talked about this week. I have no idea what our live show was about. I'd have to go back and listen to it.
So you just blow people off, basically.
Yeah, very much. I'm a terrible person. I have no fun.
Not interested.
So, Jonathan, you've never done a podcast before. This
I
is
have
your
not.
first. So.
Yes. Yeah, Travis, when I moved in next door to him, and he mentioned that he had Tiny Odd Conversations with his wife, Brandy, and you know, I was familiar with some podcasts. I listened to like Rogan and a few other ones, and it's like, oh, let's give it a whirl. We had a good chemistry, and you know, we liked hanging out. So we went over to his place. And
so what do you think of the medium as a performer compared to TV and other things you've worked in before?
It's great. You know, it's I don't find it much different. You know, being an actor, you do phone interviews all the time. You call into places all the time. You know, or you'll do a written interview all the time. So it's not always about being in front of the people. You know, it's still, sometimes you're not seen, you're just heard. Right. Whether it's on paper or, you know, through headphones.
Now, do you guys just have a conversation, or are you trying to crack each other up on purpose?
I guess we try to keep it light.
Yeah, I think personally for me, I think it's somewhere in between. Like if I'm making him laugh, because he's the only other audience at the moment, so if he's laughing, then I know what I said was funny, and vice versa. But we are trying to have a conversation, but we play off of each other well, and we have a similar sense of humor. So, I mean, there's one time I made him laugh so hard he almost passed out.
Literally, and I was like, I had to like recline my seat. I was like, I'm gonna faint. I'm gonna faint.
That could have been the Rehypnol, which he often plies his guests with.
Yeah, that's
how. Like, all right, we're gonna do our first podcast. Just put these handcuffs on. And like, why are they chained to a radiator?
Yeah.
Like,
this coffee tastes funny.
How come there's no windows?
We like it soundproof.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, we always say one of our slogans is, you know, quick question is somewhere between comedy and compelling.
Oh, nice. I like it.
We try to toe that line.
That sounds good.
Yeah, because sometimes we'll sit there and we'll talk about how I used to be a clown, and then sometimes we'll talk about astral projection and what that. If you meditate, can you travel through time by going into leaving your body? And you know, so
we talk about some intelligent stuff. We talk about, you know, or not. We talk about some compelling stuff and maybe some serious issues and stuff like that. But you know, we always try to bring it back to making people smile. We never want to end with someone being like, dun dun.
Yeah.
You know, like,
why did I listen to this?
We want to end it on a high note.
That's great.
Which is why we give all of our subscribers free heroin.
Yeah. Every time, yeah.
First one's free.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Any idea how listenership is growing at this point?
It's kind of
good. It's up and down.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? We noticed when school starts, everybody dips.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of our listeners were college or high school kids, even, which was surprising. Okay. So when school started, it was like, you know, when we started just towards the end of summer, huge, and then it dipped, and it's coming back, and now other people are finding the show. Other people in other countries, and they're saying things, and it's great.
Maybe your initial listenership were pedophiles, and the reason
I would hope so.
School starts, so it dips. I got to get busy. I got to get out
there. That is data we've never considered.
Yeah,
that is new data.
I mean, look, this is why you have to use analytics. You have
your
to figure
listeners are pedophiles.
I don't have free time. They're all in one place now.
Seriously,
compelling and. Yeah. and convicted.
Yeah, somewhere between compelling and convicted. That's great.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for stopping to talk to me.
Awesome. Anytime.
Mark, you are a mensch.
Love your show.
Thank you, man.
I'll clip you again and again.
You're the best.
And God love you both.
Back at you.
Hey,
always fun to talk to you.
God bless America, Mark.
Those guys are great. Well, I already knew Travis was great, but now I know Jonathan was also great. We hung out for the better part of the opening night party up on the 41st floor rooftop of some law firm in downtown LA for the podcast festival, and it was the nicest that this Soundcaster has ever been treated by anyone. Check out their show, Quick Question, at quickquestion.libsyn.com, or find them on iTunes or SoundCloud or wherever finer soundcasts can be found. All right, before we take another step deeper into your ears, just in time for Thanksgiving, let's grab a message from our sponsor. Hello, friends, and happy Thanksgiving from everyone at Henderson's Pants. Rather than waiting for Black Friday and getting dunked in the middle of the shopping deluge, we've got an early treat for all your meat. If your meat of choice happens to be turkey. Introducing Henderson's new turkey trousers, just in time for the traditional holiday feast. Turkey trousers, though stylish and available in a variety of snappy fall colors, bring something else to the table that isn't as obvious to the casual observer. They're made with Henderson's patented expanding waistband, the Waist Not, Want Not, which allows you to go from svelte to stocky in a single meal, and without having to unbelt, unsnap, or unzip your pants in an uncouth manner. How, you might ask? Well, friends, the belt is built in and simply a part of the Waist Not, Want Not expanding design. Before dinner, your pants are as snug as a bug in a rug, so there's no need for a real belt to hold them up. After you stuff your face with turkey and cranberry sauce and sweet potatoes with that marshmallow stuff on top and string beans in the disgusting Jell-O mold with stuff floating in it and pumpkin pie with whipped cream, not to mention highballs and eggnog and wine, the waistband expands as you do, but always with just enough extra room so you don't feel or looked stuffed to the rafters. And after dinner, the Waist Not, Want Not has enough extra give that you can pull your Henderson's turkey trousers right up around your chin and burrow into the couch for a well-deserved nap. Originally designed for use by the Incredible Hulk, Kim Kardashian's ass, and the entire Mormon Tabernacle Choir, Henderson's turkey trousers are available wherever bedraggled-looking Santas are standing outside ringing their bells for your spare change. That's Henderson's, makers of shin sheaths and butt cradles since 1621. And now, back to Succotash. As you may have been able to tell, our friend Bill Haywatt was not available for that spot. We're in the middle of contract negotiations, so he is only doing the intros and outros to the show until we figured out his deal for the next coming period of time. So I did that myself, and I'm not proud, but it was okay. Let's grab another clip out of the Hightail Direct upload bucket. This time we have a chunk from a relatively new show called Pretty Gross, hosted by Alyssa and Kayla. Here's the note they included with their upload. Quote, "Hey there, here's a clip from Pretty Gross, episode 2. Google it, a Pretty Gross Halloween special." That's the title. In it, Alyssa and Kayla talk about their recollections of learning about womanhood and how they don't want any of those questions answered by their moms. Enjoy! Unquote.
I think when I was in 5th grade, I went through like a time where I wouldn't say the word vagina.
Were you as a 5th grader saying, like, in circumstances where you had to say vagina often?
No. You know, 5th grade, 6th grade is like when you learn about being a woman, and they show you that cool calming video of how your hips widen.
Yours was calming?
You get boobs. Yeah, it was like
mine was like a dramatization of like a girl like getting her period, and then she was like carrying a bunch of pads at school, and then she like runs into her crush and they all fly into the air. It wasn't very calming.
No, ours was like this like weird cartoon, like one of those Tampax cartoons with like the girl was a white figure, but she had like black lines drawn with her, and she had like a high ponytail.
Sounds
it was
classy.
It was a pink background,
of course it was.
And it was like your hips widen and you develop breasts, and yeah, so it was that.
I think I vomited,
and so they would be like, in your vagina, and I was always just like, and so I think that traumatized me a little bit because I hated it because my mom first forced me to go. She was like,
you had the option to not.
Well, I think your parents signed you up for this class. It was like girls' night, and then you had like a separate boys' night, and the boys would go in the boy teacher room, and the girls would go in the girl teacher room, and you would learn about adolescence and becoming a woman.
My mom asked me before that. She was like, "Do you have any questions you want to ask me before?" And I was like, "Nope."
Oh, my mom too.
No.
My mom was definitely like, "We're always here to talk to you about anything, answer any of your questions." And it's like, listen, I'm sure you guys have a lot of knowledge.
Oh, of course.
I get it.
You had babies.
Exactly. You had babies. You know what's up when you're fucking.
I can't ask you about
it.
But
I will never, ever, on pain of death, ask you about your sex life.
No.
Ever.
No. Still to this day.
Still to this day.
I will
still
not.
To this day. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to hear about the time you gave that one dude to BJ. I don't.
Not that my mom doesn't try, but we just do not have that relationship because I've put up a firm wall ever since that moment in 6th grade. And she's like, "Do you have any questions?" I was like,
No.
Even if I do, I'd rather not know.
And they try to like suck you in like at different times in your teenage life. They'd be like, "I know, like, did Johnny ask you out to the dance? You know you don't have to say yes." And it's like, Mom, I don't want to talk about this with you.
I never had that. I also had the older sister, so that helped because not that she and I talked about anything, but she got books that then later became my books. So I got to read a lot of like, from 1989, like what is it like to be a girl? And that's
that's solid.
Oh no, my mom did buy me a book once. She bought me a book. It was super cute, and it was like everything you need to know about like becoming a woman, but we're too afraid to ask, something like that. And it was like trying to appeal to like young teens, and I was mortified that she bought it for me.
It's mortifying.
Still
it's
read
mortifying,
it,
which is why I had trouble saying the word vagina.
Sure.
And I would just say V. I would just call it my V.
Who are you talking to about your V?
I don't know. People, kids talk about V's all the time.
I never talked to anyone.
Really?
About my vagina in 5th grade? No.
Well,
I said fuck a lot.
I said fuck since like 5th or like since
3rd.
I was 5.
I started in 3rd.
My parents were like, "Listen, there's a time and place for this language, and it's not at school." But yeah, so I wouldn't say vagina for like 2 or 3 years. What's really great about that story is my crazy aunt.
Don't say her name.
No.
You can if you want.
No. I'm saying it like she's going to listen to this podcast.
I hope to God she does. And she gets her own shout out.
But she still loves to bring it up to this day.
That you said V.
No. She's like, "Do you remember that time?"
That you said fuck?
No. When Alyssa was like, when Alyssa couldn't say the word vagina? Do you remember when Alyssa couldn't say vagina?
I just want to know why you were in so many scenarios where this came up. I don't think I have ever said the word vagina to anyone in my extended family. Like maybe my mother, probably my sister. That's it. Like
I don't know. I feel like I call it, I was like, "Can we not say the word vagina? Can we just say V?" And my mom was like, "Fine," but apparently it was weird to everybody else.
Love it. Very refreshing to hear a couple of women just getting real and shooting the shit. They're only about 3 or 4 episodes in at this point, so give them your ears on iTunes and other Soundcast distribution points, including their home site at prettygross.libsyn.com/website. Back to some interview action, this time with Chris Gore, longtime buddy and friend of this show. He used to host Podcrash with Chris Gore, where he would crash other people's shows and then use that as his episodes. He folded that tent a few years ago, but now he's back with Film Threat, the podcast version of his former hit movie magazine and current website. I didn't know he was going to even be at LA Podfest this year, but he showed up and really wanted to record a conversation because he had a question for me about something that felt right in my personal area of expertise, naming, specifically movie titles. It was it was exactly like this. Chris Gore joining us at the podcast lab of the 6th annual Los Angeles Podcast Festival. Welcome back.
Yes,
I'm Succotash.
I'm here with Marc Hershon at the
Podfest.
At Podfest. So, but I'm here because just some things that have bothered me that I think that you could help.
Okay.
With some independent filmmakers.
Okay.
So, a really good indie movie recently came out that we reviewed on filmthreat.com called This Is Us. Okay. And it is a brilliant indie romance that has sort of a fantasy element that my co-host from Film Threat, Anthony Ray Bench, reviewed it on the site, gave it a rave review. Here's the issue, and this is why I want to talk to you.
Okay.
There's a TV show already called This Is Us.
There is
and
indeed.
This is a movie called This Is Us. And additionally, down the pike will be these movies that come out that we review. We try to keep the focus indie movie and movies playing in theaters that I know that I have a personal interest in. I know our audience would. Naming is so important.
Yeah.
Then what's in a name? So I'm asking you, what's in a name of a movie? And you famously helped me. You've helped me in a bunch of different ways, but you helped name a side business I had called So Me Unlimited.
That's right.
So Me Unlimited, which you can follow the Twitter, which is when I did social media work for a while, like that, you named the company. I couldn't come up with a name for my company. You are known for naming.
That's true.
I mean, that's been your business.
That's what I do,
so
yeah.
I want to ask you, how do you do that? And what are the things that people should know? I mean, the obvious thing, you should just, when you come up with a name, you should Google the name. It should be an original name, right?
That is a big help.
It's a big help,
From two reasons. One is to eliminate confusion.
Right.
A friend of mine runs a live show in San Francisco called Speechless, which is a live PowerPoint comedy presentation show. And then now they're interested in trying to do it for television, but ABC has a show called Speechless. Right, which is a sitcom.
And technically speaking, you can't own a name.
That
you can
is
own
correct.
a trademark, but you can't own a name per se.
You can't own a title.
Right.
You can copyright your work, but you cannot own the actual title, right? Which is why there's, I think, 3 or 4 songs called In the Mood.
Right.
So you can't get the title. So you're right. You want to eliminate the confusion, and you want something that's original, so you can own it, in a sense. If you're the first one out of the box with that original title, you can stand a good chance to make sure that even if something comes out down the pike that has the same name, people are going to think of your thing first, as opposed to the new thing.
Right.
Because you've established a stake in the ground.
Like if I did a movie called Star Wars now, it would probably not. I'd probably be in trouble. But I mean, this also applies, now that I think about it, it really applies not just to namings of movies. I think there's a specialty there in the sense that the success of so many small indie films is due to the digital market, where you're encouraged to add the letter A to the beginning. I worked on this movie called At Middleton with Andy Garcia and Vera Farmiga, and it's a really sweet romance, but the name of the movie was Middleton, and they changed the name of the movie to At Middleton, which is a college in the film. But because they named it At, it was top in because people are lazy. They're like, ugh, does anyone watch movies past the letter S?
It's like the old phone book listings,
Yeah,
you had like quadruple A auto parts.
But this is useful. Yeah, this is useful information not just for namings of movies. I'm sure there's different, subtleties within each, but also namings of podcasts.
Yeah.
What's in a name? I don't know how much you want to brag about yourself and your work in this arena, but you work professionally naming things.
That's right. Yeah.
So, could you brag about yourself? Is what I'm asking. I'm trying to prompt you to brag about yourself.
I work for a large branding firm now. I worked for a smaller branding firm for a long time, and doing that work, I've named things like the BlackBerry, the original BlackBerry.
Now, what's the BlackBerry? I'm kidding. I know what the... Yes, BlackBerry.
There are probably kids being born now that will not have an idea what the BlackBerry was. Right. Swiffer for Procter & Gamble.
Really?
Yes.
I purchased Swiffers.
Dasani
the Swiffer Dusters.
Dasani mineral water.
I'm drinking. There's one in my bag right now.
There you go.
Look how you touched so many lives,
exactly.
mine included.
Clash of Clans, the tablet game. I named that for Supercell in Finland. On and on. Crackle for Sony. I named that.
So, you're famous in this arena. I don't know why you don't brag about it.
My name is not famous, but my names are famous.
Right. Well, tell me about that then. Like, what is the process you go through? I mean, obviously there's a legal vetting. Do you start with a Google search? Just because I feel that this situation really upset me from the standpoint of this movie, This Is Us, is going to get buried by everything. Even when we were trying to look for pictures to post on the Film Threat website, we couldn't find this. We kept seeing the TV show that like everywhere. It was impossible, so hard to find it, and it's such a good film. So I think that this is kind of this is something that is really important. Then there's movies where I think the name is so good you never forget it, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's such a good name. And there's movies that there are films in my mind where it's like the name is so good. I'm going to see a movie just based on the name, and I know that helped when my Big Fat Independent Movie was on the festival circuit, and we played about 40 film festivals all over the world. Many people went to see it just because the name stood out in the program guide, because so many indie filmmakers, the names, they want to go with something earnest and sentimental and kind of, to me that's just, it's milquetoast. You gotta like...
Well, it's the name of anything, whether it's a product, a service, a movie, is the core of your brand. So it needs to stand for what you want the brand to be about. Even if the name may not be understandable at the beginning. I was joking earlier with somebody, as a branding expert, I wasn't really smart naming my show Succotash, but to me it is what the brand is, because I play clips of other people's shows. So it's this Succotash of podcasting, right? So people can't spell it, people don't know what Succotash is, but I don't care. To me, it's a brand. And if my show ever really got popular, it would make a lot of sense to the right people, right? But I ran into the exact same problem that This Is Us people are doing. I had several movies on the Hallmark Channel, and one of them was called Wedding Days, starring John Larroquette. And a year later, a feature film came out called Wedding Days, even spelled D-A-Z-E like I had on the Hallmark thing. Fortunately, mine came out first. But now if you try to look up Wedding Days online, all you see is that feature film, and mine's gone. But I was there first, so I feel like, well, there's nothing I can do, because it's not like I had a chance to correct it at that point. The This Is Us movie, now I don't know how much release or how much distribution it's had, but if it hasn't been widely released, they can change the name.
When do you decide to change the name of something in the process, knowing something else is on the horizon, or do you do like what some have done, especially this applies more to apps more than anything else, is an app as a name that doesn't, that name didn't exist before, and it's a made-up name, which is what they've had to do, or a clever respelling or a combination of words. I'm a big fan of portmanteau.
Sure.
At some point, I want to make a portmanteau bag. I'm sure someone has done that.
I love
portmanteau, so that has served me with some things. But what do people do then?
Well, it's interesting.
I
had a friend of mine who did do an independent movie, and they were calling it Casual Encounters. It was based on sort of casual encounters, like on Craigslist. Mm-hmm. But there was already something out there called Casual Encounters, and they were starting to hit the art festivals, right? The movie festivals. Mm-hmm. And he said, "What can we do?" And we came up with a new name, but in parentheses it said formerly close or Casual Encounters, because it had gotten enough attention that they wanted to make sure that people that already had seen the movie or knew about it knew that the title had changed. Right. So those are that's just one kind of thing to think about. It really depends how much distribution the film's gotten. Once it's really out there, it's kind of hard to correct anything unless you do a whole re-release.
Well, there was a movie that I know about from film history that was originally titled Revenge of the Jedi, and then when it came out, they changed it to Return of the Jedi, and Lucas at the time had said that, Jedi don't really get revenge, it's kind of against the Jedi code, so it's Return, we change it. But the rumor was that he changed it because he didn't want bootleggers. There were people bootlegging. As soon as the title was announced, there was bootleg merchandise from Revenge of the Jedi, and in a way to, dissuade that bootleg merchandise, because, you can find in the interview where George Lucas says that he's basically a toy maker. Yes. That he's making toys. Yeah. That he changed it to Return of the Jedi because to, throw them off course. But so that's one of the rare cases where
I
that's
also
happened.
heard that he flooded the market with Revenge of the Jedi shit. So the stuff that had gotten out early on was no longer worth anything, because there were so many copies of posters that he threw out there that it suddenly diluted the marketplace.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
I know too much about Star Wars. But now back to this naming thing. Is there advice that you can give to indie filmmakers, and advice you can give to me of okay, we're trying to name something. And I'm usually good at, because I've had friends, I've named friends' books, I've named friends, I don't do this professionally, this is just, friend will say, I'll name that. I've come up with names for columns in Film Threat, and just for all various projects, I've come up with names, podcasts, whatnot. I even had a name that was a column in Film Thread in the 90s called Never Coming to a Theater Near You, which ended up, Kenneth Turan actually ended up using it as the title of his book. And I was like, dude, and I called him and I said, hey, that was, a title of a column in Film Thread. He said, well, it's already done and the publisher likes it and that's it and whatever. And he was right. I mean, whatever. It was a column, and I mean, I'm not so precious about names anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't whatever.
Yeah.
But like, what can you give? Like, I'm like, what sort of kernel of knowledge? Because I think this is important. And when you're a filmmaker, there's so much that can go wrong.
Yes.
And
very little you have control of.
Right.
But the title is something you have control of.
You have control of the title. So is it about not being so precious with the name and being willing to pivot?
Well, yes. Number one, don't get married to anything.
Right.
Number two, we as filmmakers and film writers, we have access to one of the best databases in the world, IMDb.
Right.
And if you have an idea for a title, just stick it in there and see how many times it's already been used, which is probably 4 or 5 times. As a short, as a feature, as a TV show, you'll see it all. It's right there, and you just go, you know what, I'm going to change it, rather than go, well, what if we add an E, or what if, well, no, that's not going to matter, because word of mouth is word of mouth, it's not word of spelling.
Right.
Right? So if you add an E to the thing and it doesn't change the pronunciation, that's not going to help the movie in terms of being a unique title. So you really want to go for uniqueness, and people get married to these things early on. I often will have a title for a movie before I've written the script.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because, well, I'll think of the idea and I go, oh, it'd be a great title for this. But then when I get done with the script, I go, oh, that's a shitty title. But it was like my stake in the ground for my mind to say this is what the movie is around. Right? And you just have to know, even when we present names to clients in the branding business, we don't say, here's your name. Right? We generate literally, like I'm working on a project right now, we've generated 1,300 names. We will select 200 of those to put into preliminary legal clearance. So that's a lawyer who looks at those things, sees what else is out there that's close, and from that we may get 70 usable names back. And then we look at those and go, okay, which of these are really defining the brand or really supporting what the brand is trying to say? And we'll winnow that down to a list of maybe 35 names.
Wow.
And then we'll say, which of these do we really like that we think they can do something with? Lend themselves to a design, they're easy for people to remember, they're easy to pronounce, they're decidedly different from anything that's directly in the marketplace. And that'll give us maybe 20 to 25 names, right? And so we'll show the client 20 featured names, and then we'll show them a backup list of 15 more additional names that we didn't think were as strong, but it's not our industry. Maybe you guys will see more value in these names. And then we say, now you have to do final legal clearance. We've done preliminary, which is good, but it's about 50% of the way there.
Right.
So then it's like, now your counsel has to take, first of all, pick 8 to 10 of these names we've just shown you. Give those to your counsel, and if you're really lucky, 3 to 5 of those names will come back that you can use, and then you decide with your heart which of those names is the name for your thing.
I don't think you get paid enough to do this.
It's incredibly hard. People have no idea.
Well, this is why I thought it was so fortuitous running into you here, because, and this situation was fresh in my mind where I thought, well, this filmmaker is going to get boned by having a name that's close to a well-known TV show. It's
Absolutely.
sort of disheartening.
Yeah.
So I just think that's important. It's something that because there's so many names, like a name is something, like I'll remember a name. You want people to be able to remember a name so they can repeat the name to someone else. Say, I saw X movie at a film festival where I saw 40 films, but this is the one movie that stood out to me, and you want to let people know that. Or in there's so much content now that like for something to stand out is difficult, right? Like,
well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like. I really like that movie, and the title's almost unimportant. It's, let's take Star Wars for instance. Okay, it's developed this whole culture around it, right? And Star Wars, it's this classic thing. But think about it like a friend. Like if somebody walked in the room and said, "Hey, there's Chris Gore," and I looked over and it wasn't a guy with your hairstyle and bleached hair and the look that you have, I go, "That's not Chris Gore." No, his name is Chris Gore. I go, "But it's not Chris Gore."
Right. Well, if
right?
you look up Chris Gore on iTunes, there's a preacher that is named Chris Gore. It's very successful. And so that's
but you know what
ministries.
But you know what his name isn't?
What?
That Chris Gore.
That's right. That's why I did that.
I know.
When I signed up for MySpace, this is so many years ago, someone named Chris Gore already had that vanity name, and I was like, dang it. So I just said that, Chris Gore.
Right.
You know, I mean it in a derisive way, but then that just became, through any social network, I would grab that name.
And that became your brand.
That became, yeah. So but I wasn't trying to do a brand.
No.
Just to be clear, like there's so much talk of branding that in terms of people's careers, but I think that gets kind of annoying to me. Like I didn't try to have a brand. I just tried to not.
The best brands.
People not be confused.
But the best brands at their heart are organic. They're the kind of brands that when you look at the thing or you use the product, you go, this couldn't have been called anything else.
Right.
Like when I tell people the BlackBerry story, as it truly happened, not the way the...
Can you talk about that now?
Nah, I prefer not to.
Okay.
Sometimes get in
trouble.
But
wait, if you want to, you'll hear it at some point on the Succotash podcast. At some point, you're going to do it.
Yeah, I
so
have
subscribe
before.
To Succotash.
Yeah, I have before in the past.
Yeah.
But when the names were presented to the CEO in Waterloo, Canada, where Research in Motion was, there were a dozen names that we showed them. But BlackBerry had already become so ingrained for various reasons in the mind of the executives of that company, even I couldn't tell you what those other 11 names were. Because that thing couldn't have been called, I'm talking about the original BlackBerry, not the phone. This was the original device, right? It
Which was like a PDA, right?
It was like a little. It looked like a little pager.
Yes.
And that's where the Genesis came from, because the marketing director passed out these prototypes of the device. The one I happened to have was this black plastic pager, but they'd industrial designed these little tiny rounded black plastic keys on it. I go, it looks like a high-tech version of a BlackBerry. That was the genesis of it.
Oh my God!
It was just a casual observation. It wasn't, you should call this thing a BlackBerry.
Wow.
But the weird leap was, the guy from Waterloo, Canada, who is the marketing director, says, that's such a cool idea. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's no such thing in nature as a BlackBerry, so it sounds high-tech. And we said, but there is a BlackBerry. But because he was from this little town in Canada, outside Toronto, he literally had never heard the word BlackBerry.
Wow.
They don't have them there.
Wow.
They have something called a Loganberry, which is very close.
Right.
And so we literally showed him a picture. This is a BlackBerry. He goes, I still like that name. And the CEO was also from Waterloo, Canada. So when it came time to pull the trigger, they all thought, what a great name.
Wow. Well, first, I don't think you can emphasize enough how important this is. It's literally making your project stand out. And then also, there are things with Star Wars that has annoyed me a little bit, because I feel the name Star Wars is so big that they don't even care about the name of because there's so many Star Wars things. There's TV shows and video games and this. It's Star Wars and then the subhead of whatever it is, The Last Jedi. Although technically, The Last Jedi was a comic book from a while ago. You could just look it up, The Last Jedi, and there's a comic book with that title on the cover. So that comic writer didn't realize that far in the future that would actually be the name of episode. I always liked when they went with episode 8 or whatever, episode 9, whatever their
because then it was a story.
Yes, and The Empire Strikes Back was, to me, that is the best Star Wars title, and the famous story behind that was Gary Kurtz was doing an interview, and he was asked about what the name of the next Star Wars movie is, and he said, well, they'd kind of be like chapters like out of a serial, those old serials that played at movie theaters. Maybe it would be called something like The Empire Strikes Back, and that just then became the title, but he randomly said it in an interview during the development of what was called then Star Wars 2.
Oh my God.
Which became Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Hilarious.
And there we are. I bring everything back to Star Wars, and I was trying to talk about indie film and help indie filmmakers and whatnot, but it's such a pleasure to run into you here at the festival. Yeah, exactly. And I just love that. So I would just say to the Film Threat listeners listening to this, subscribe to Succotash, check it out. Marc Hershon is not just working in the branding firm and whatnot, and not just doing the podcast. You're also a screenwriter that has had films produced, not just you're working on your screenplay. So the diversity of your career and just everything you've done, it's just always awesome to talk to you.
I just model myself after you, Chris.
Well, I got too much going on. I'm just trying to do one thing well, and one day I'll do that. Mark, thanks
Chris,
for talking
great
to
to
me.
see you. Absolutely.
Great to see you.
I am a big fan of Chris Gore. Even helped to kickstarter his Film Threat efforts back into existence. Check out his Soundcast Film Threat at soundcloud.com/filmthreat and wherever quality shows are streamed and or downloaded. We've got one last leftover interview from the Los Angeles Podcast Festival. Murray Valeriano is a comedian, also the host of Road Stories, where he has comics on to share battle stories about life on the road. He was also featured recently in Jordan Brady's I Am Battle comic documentary about comedians who perform in Middle Eastern war zones for the troops. Our paths have crossed over the years, mainly at the Podfest, but this year, finally, we got a chance to talk it all around. All right, I'm sitting with Murray Valeriano.
Hey, man. Nice to see you again.
You too. Host of Road Stories.
The Road Stories podcast.
The Soundcast. And you got started earlier than probably everyone that's currently in this room.
True, considering, well, no, Brendo.
Brendo has been around for a while, you're right.
Yeah, he might beat me, but I'm about 10 years, I think, maybe even more.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
But it was so early on that I didn't bother to acknowledge that I was doing it, so I don't have the exact date, but I haven't gone back to figure it out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just say 10 years.
That's all you have to do.
Right.
So I've been coming to this thing for all 6 years. I think you've been coming to this thing.
I've been involved in the Los Angeles Podcast Festival since the beginning.
Yeah.
And in one way or another, in one form or another.
Yeah. And what do you think of this year compared to previous years? We're in a completely different location.
Well, the location aesthetically is awesome.
Yes.
It's the Biltmore Hotel.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Acoustically, it leaves a little something to be desired.
Well, thank God. I was originally in the Gold Room, and I'm sorry your listeners don't know what I'm talking about, but I was originally in the sound in that room is awful. But I switched it because I'm insecure and I think nobody's ever going to come to my show. So I switched it to a smaller room, and then of course everybody came to my show. But the sound was great in that.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Because the sound in the rooms where I've been moderating is great. They're the smaller meeting
Sure,
rooms.
Absolutely. But there's some cavernous
rooms. Well, this podcast lab is one of them. It's like
look how high the ceilings are.
No, it's like a cathedral in here, which is crazy.
Do you remember the old Tommy T's?
Yes.
Up in
the one up in
Pleasant
Hill.
The one that was a steakhouse?
Yes.
That
Concord, the one in Concord.
Yeah. It used to be a steakhouse, and they converted it to a comedy club.
Yeah.
And it had the rafters with the high ceilings, and the laughs just got lost.
Well, it's like where Cobb's Comedy Club is now, on Columbus up there. It was in the cannery.
Oh, right.
And it was a great 200-seat room, low ceiling, great sight lines. Now they're in what used to be Wolfgang's, which was a music club.
Right.
High ceilings and everything.
A balcony.
Everything just disappears.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Absolutely. Comedy needs to be compact.
But you must get to hear about a lot of different rooms from the guests on your show.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm assuming. So,
sure.
After 10 years of Road Stories, are you still getting surprised by people's tales of horror?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, I'm surprised at, because I'll have some, it's not an open door policy for me, but if I respect you as a comedian, you can come on my show. I know a lot of shows have to, I'm sorry, you're not a celebrity, you can't be on my show. I'm not like that. If you're a funny comic, come on my show, let's have a good time.
That's great.
And a lot of my listeners, they're like, we love when you have Hardwick, we love when you have Brian Regan, but we love discovering new comics.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so new comics, sure, I expect the Road Stories, but then you get some of the bigger guys who are like, I've been doing this for, about a month ago, so it never really.
Interesting.
It really is this, you never know what you're going to get when you step on stage. It really still, no matter what level you get at.
And do you get younger comics telling a story that to them was mind-blowing that you've heard half a dozen times, where it's like, relax, kid?
Oh, absolutely. I had a young comic on the other day, very funny guy, and he was like, oh man, I went and I did this bar gig in Idaho, and they had the the playoff games on the show, and they didn't turn them off. I'm like,
Perfect.
Like, dude, wait till they turn them off and see how horrible that is.
Yeah.
Because
turned off a game.
Exactly. The people are there just to see the game. They turn it off to not want to hear comedy.
Oh my God. Those are nightmare gigs. Like you said, either way.
Absolutely.
Either way. I believe I mentioned you when I was covering I Am Battle Comic. Because you appear in I Am Battle Comic.
Yes.
And we've had Jordan on the show a number of times.
Jordan's great. My neighbor, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll tell him I said hi.
I will.
I've known Jordan since he was doing stand-up back in San Francisco.
Oh, of course you do. Absolutely.
But since I sort of talked about that movie and talked to Jordan about his experience, what's it been like from a road story perspective of going over and entertaining the troops?
Oh, well, it's fascinating. It was fascinating. I don't know. It has every level of the bad road story in it, and to every level of the good road story to it, because obviously these tours are booked by bookers, and you being a booker, I don't know how extensive tours you book, but they often think of the way of, okay, we're going to fly these guys to London, and the next plane leaves at 2, but if we book them on the plane that leaves at 8, I can save $50. So, there's a lot of downtime in the airports.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff. But the shows are great. I mean, then you get some, everybody always says, oh man, the audiences, the troops are just so grateful, which 99.9% is true. I happened to do an aircraft carrier that was at sea for 6 months, and they had been told they were going home 4 times, and on the way home got rerouted back out. So they were not happy about anything.
And now the comedy style
hey, who's here from Georgia? And they were just like, we want to go home.
Wow.
So, but no, I mean, it's really great, and I'm excited. Hopefully I'm going to go back to the Middle East in the beginning of the year. It's a blast. I mean, it is really fun and rewarding. We did a show, and I actually talk about this story in I Am Battle Comic, but they just used the tail end of how much I enjoyed doing it. But we were in Djibouti, Africa, and we were with they're called Quick Response Team. They're Marines.
Yeah.
They're Marines, and they're just on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we didn't know that. We're like, but they let us play in their turrets and their guns and stuff. It was a blast. It's like, so we'll see you at the show tonight. Oh no, we can't. We don't leave this. We go on patrol. It's the only time we leave this.
Wow.
And so the other comic with me, I think it was Steve Mazan, said, hey, well, our show doesn't start till 8. Your patrol comes in at 7. Why don't we come down here and do some stuff for you guys? And so we came back at 7. We piled 2x4s on top of each other. They were literally in their Humvees, flak jackets on, like 30 guys, did a show for them. Maybe my favorite show of all last year.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. It was such a blast.
Well, they must have loved it.
Oh, they had a great, absolutely. Because they've been hearing their neighbor's same story for the last 6 months. So any story that's not my Bunky's story is great.
What if you had a chance to do another podcast, maybe keep road stories going and do something else, because you've been doing road stories for so long, what's something that's really of intense interest to you that you think would be good podcast fodder?
Well, I am going to do a new podcast.
What a coincidence.
Yes, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Is that a weird...
Well, if you were going to talk about it, what would it be about?
I will say this. I love stories, so it will be in the story vein, or genre, I should say. It'll be in the story genre. Because I love life experiences. I love, I love life stories. I mean, that's, so it'd be in that vein.
Now, do you do your podcast episodes strictly from one location, or do you do them while you're on the road?
I do. When I get a chance, I do it live on the road, and literally live on the road. I bring my mixer, put it in the car, my computer, microphones. I usually do it when I'm doing a local and I have the opener who can drive. I make him drive. And then we record live on the way to the gig, and then we do the gig, and then we record on the way back. But I rarely do it on like, Saturday night at the Irvine Improv, where it's sold out. I always do it on those questionable, this could go south really quickly. So we record, we have a good time going up, and sometimes we have a good time going out, sometimes we have a good time coming back. Sometimes we have a good time going up, and sometimes it's like that Vegas, leaving Vegas, yeah, let's go to Vegas, and you're like, I'm never going to Vegas again. So we kind of keep that. But I'm sure breaking 100 laws while I'm doing it. If you can't text, I'm sure you can't podcast while you drive.
It's not on the books.
It's true.
I've looked, it's not on the books.
Good point.
Not yet.
So those are always fun. I haven't done one in a while, so hopefully I'll do it. Oh, you know what? Speaking of Steve Maison, I'm doing a little one-nighter bar gig in Orange County next week. I might do it next week.
Okay. Now, have you, having had comics in the car doing your podcast, have you inspired other comics to do podcasts?
Oh,
do you think?
I would like to think so. I would like to think so.
But you've not.
I was inspired to do it by Jimmy Pardo. He was the first podcast I ever listened to.
Okay.
Never Not Funny, and started mine. So it's great to be a guest on his when I do his. But I would like to think so, but I don't know if I've had that.
Nobody's contacted you. You started me off on this road.
Yeah, no. Mostly they find out I'm a preacher's kid, and it was like, you inspired me to leave the religion also.
I always have mixed feelings because the nature of my podcast is playing clips of other people's podcasts. I've got a lot of people that started their podcast because they've been inspired listening to this.
That's great.
And it is, but I do have there's a little piece of me that just goes, but now you don't have time to listen to my podcast. Because most podcasters are so busy trying to put theirs together that they don't listen anymore, which is hilarious.
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts either, but I listen to them when I'm on the road. And because I try to drive as much as possible because I don't like flying. Then I haven't been on the road in a couple months, so my backlog of podcasts have been.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the podcasts, so I have to apologize. I'm like, sorry, I'm so behind.
Well, that's what's funny is because of the nature of my podcast, I have to listen to them.
Oh, absolutely, right, of course.
Because I interview or I review for Split Sider,
sure, absolutely,
and for Huffington Post. I do nothing but listen to podcasts. I haven't read a book in a year.
I'm jealous of your podcast. I wish I could, because I can't. I used to be able to work out to podcast. Now I can't for some reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you don't get any rhythm going.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I listen to podcasts because I do this kind of power hike thing every morning for like an hour. And the couple of times that the podcast didn't download or something, I hike in this area that doesn't have reception.
Oh, right.
So if it didn't download before I got there, I have nothing to listen to, so I'll listen to music, and I go, hey, this is much better.
I know, listening to music working out is much better. Yeah. But that's happened to me on the airplane, where I'm like, oh, great, I'll catch up on Rock Solid or Kira Sultanovich or anything, and I'm like, I didn't download it. Yeah. Oh, man, there's 4 hours of podcasting I missed.
Yeah, so it's aggravating. Any advice, because I have a lot of podcasters that are audience for this podcast, and a lot of them are just starting out. So because you've had so much experience over the course of time, any sort of things come to mind for the young podcaster? And by young, I mean just somebody who hasn't been doing it very long.
Well, I would say do something you're passionate about, because it's a lot more work than you think it is.
Yeah, that's the truth.
It really is. I even said the other night when I did my show here, I'm talking to 2 other successful podcasters, Paul Gilmartin and Jimmy Dore. I'm like, it's a grind. They're like, yeah, and it is, and it's a grind. But so make sure it's something you're passionate about, and don't worry about making money out of the gate. I think you and I talked about that the other day, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry about download numbers. There's penis envy and there's download envy. And I never talk numbers. I never talk numbers. And it was funny, my buddy Jake Johansson, you must know Jake.
Very well, yes.
Absolutely. He's like, yeah, what's your download numbers is the new what kind of car do you drive?
Yeah, I never track mine. I do it because I love doing it.
Absolutely.
And it was funny, I was moderating that sponsor panel yesterday, and there were like a bunch of hands shot up when one of my guests, the guy Rob from Libsyn, asked how many people have not started their podcast. And they're like, a dozen hands shot up. Well, why are you here? I want to find out how to get a sponsor. It's like, well, you haven't even started a show. What do you care about whether you have sponsors yet?
Right.
You know, you don't even know if you can do a show.
Absolutely.
So it's amazing how, because of the success of podcasting in general, and by success I mean there's just a lot of them out there.
Sure.
I think people are going, it's like when YouTube started and people started making some money at it. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to be a YouTube star.
Right, absolutely.
I want to be Mark Maron.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no. So that's why I say be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And that way you can approach it from the guerrilla radio aspect of it, which it really is. You know, once you start as a guy who's done advertising on my shows, once you get advertisers, you got people to answer to.
Yes.
And I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't do a lot of sponsorship. Luckily I'm with All Things Comedy, which is a network, which is, they said, hey, if you want to do advertising, cool. If not, don't worry, you know. So be careful, because all of a sudden it becomes a job, which everybody knows when something becomes a job, it becomes less fun.
That's right. And then you find yourself doing make-good commercials for the ones you fucked up.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And then you're like, oh, then I'm all right. But, you know, for advertising, I mean, there's different ways to get sponsorship and stuff like that. You know?
That's just it. You know, I've begun to hear some of these sort of way off a network podcast. This guy doing his own thing, where he's gotten some local industry or local company to pay him whatever. Maybe they're paying him $25 or $50 or whatever, and you go, hey, that's money, and it's about as much money as you're going to make anyway,
right,
even if
absolutely.
it's Casper mattress.
Yeah.
You know, so go to somebody that you can.
Or AdamandEve.com.
And this was a great piece of information that came from one of the guys on the sponsorship panel. Was go to somebody that you can have a personal relationship with. It's a guy that has a store in your town or runs a factory or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so they go, yeah, I'll give you $50 a week. That's fine.
Right. Or not even financial. I mean, I've had a couple listeners are brewmasters at a brewery, so they send me beer for my.
Can't beat that.
Absolutely, right? I just had somebody talk to me about wanting to give me coffee for my, and I try to, you know, we don't pay my guests, and my guests are very busy and normally, you know, usually very successful. So I want to be able to give them something for coming. You know what I mean? Besides a T-shirt, another T-shirt. You know?
Yeah. How many T-shirts can you wear?
It's absolutely. So I mean, they're very. I'm Rock Solid. I co-host. It's not officially my podcast, but I co-host Rock Solid. Bose just gave us 4 or 5 sets of their high-end headphones.
Wow.
For 24 episodes, I think it's 24 episodes to advertise Bose.
And did they reach out to you or vice versa?
I think Pat Francis is the host. He reached out to them.
That's great.
And again, also ask.
Yes.
I know it took me very long in life to realize that if you ask for things, people give them to you.
Yes. Well, Murray, I know you want to get to another show here. Tell folks where they can find Road Stories.
Well, you go to roadstories.tv is the website. You can get it on iTunes, Libsyn, all the Stitcher, basically all the platforms.
Sure.
Google Murray Valeriano Road Stories, it'll come up. And give it a listen. If you like it, give me a shout. I return all my emails. If you don't like it, give me a shout. I return all my emails. I take any kind of criticism. I learned some PC words that I'm not supposed to say the hard way. For people calling me and saying we don't say that anymore because it's offensive. I'm not against learning.
All right, Murray, thanks so much.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. And that is Murray V. Turns out we have a lot of friends in common in the comedy world. We also had a fun time with that brief chat. Murray's going to be up here in NorCal in the new year doing some comedy at our nearby Throckmorton Theater in Mill Valley. So he and I plan to have a longer sit down and really get into it when he gets local. Find his show Road Stories on iTunes, Stitcher. It's all part of the All Things Comedy Soundcast Network. Or grab it from his home site, roadstories.libsyn.com. It's been a long time since we ventured into the tweet sack. Look at that! Tweety's still alive. And I never even feed that little guy. What you got for us, Tweety? All right. Got a note from Meg Wright, the editor for SplitSider.com, who I write my weekly Soundcast reviews for in the This Week in Comedy podcast column. She says it's time to start thinking about the annual wrap-up edition, and I have. I've picked a favorite episode of the year and 3, quote, bests, unquote. Now, I'm not going to let any cats out of any bags, but the 3 bests are Best Mock Thought Leader Soundcast, Best Repurposing Audio from Yesteryear Soundcast, and Most Missed Pop Culture Soundcast. If you think you can guess any of those, well, shh, just keep it to yourself. Got a note from Danny LaBelle's wife, Kylie. Danny hosts Modern Day Philosopher's Soundcast, and she wanted to clue me in that he's got Baron Vaughn on the episode that just dropped. Listened, loved it, and spoiler alert, I will be reviewing it this coming week on splitsider.com. Ned Kenny reached out. He's the creator of the Laughable app, which I think is the best way to stream or download your favorite comedy soundcasts. Well, Ned just made it betterer by adding show and episode sorting to the app. So now you can find all the episodes of all the soundcasts featuring Paul F. Tompkins, perhaps. And bam, they're ready to go. Check out the Laughable app. It's right there in the iTunes store. I think. Well, I know they're working on a Google version. I don't know if it's done yet, but that's Laughable. Also check @Laughable on Twitter. Here's a little reminder for your inbox. We put out the Succotash Daily every day, and it's a little newsletter filled with comedy and soundcast news. It's free. It's fun. You just have to subscribe once at hirsch.co/dailysuck. DAILYSUCC. hirschgo/dailysuck. That's it, the Succotash Daily, and it's in your inbox every day as soon as you subscribe. All right, it's time once again for our Cavalcade of Gratitude, where we rattle off the names, handles, avatars, and IDs of folks kind and decent enough to mention Succotash by way of their social media in the past couple of weeks. Whether they've tweeted, retweeted, followed, liked, starred, thumbs up, or otherwise acknowledged this soundcast's existence, we just like to mention them as a way of saying, hey, thanks. Christine Blackburn, Phil Ernest, Kylie Ora Lobel, Danny LaBelle, Rick Karlsruher, Aristotle Dreyer, Meliodas, Amy Phelps, Chris Gore, Ed Wallach, Illusionoid, Monster Party, Girls Gone Geek, Tyson Sainer, our associate producer and co-host of the Antisocial Show with another friend of Succotash, Hunter Block, who broke the curse by clicking on the donate button at succotashshow.com. And guess what? It works! The donate button works! So, for those of you who may not been clicking on the button because you thought it might have been broken, never fear. It works great. Click away. Continuing. Ice in the Face, Brody's Kitchen, Waffle Sunday, Honey Cunt, Angus Doodle, Constant Struggle Podcast, Sharon Houston, Stephen Weensiri, Barely Friending, G the C, Sup Doc, Paco Romaine, Will Scoville, Podcast Booster Bot, Broken Filter Live Podcast, The Naked Porch, The Worst Writer in the World, Unadulterated BS, Dirty Bit Podcast, Changes in Latitudes, Gratuitous Phil, Salty Language Podcast, History Teller, The Gist, Film Threat, Radio Play Today, Hype Streets, The Slant, D-Head Factor, Jordan Brady, and Carrie Snow. Thanks again for those of you who took the time out to infest your social media streams with helping out little old Succotash. I know we're running overtime, but you know what? The network can take it up with my producer. Before we get out of here, we're going to dip into a rich vein of political humor, courtesy of our friend Will Durst and our second Burst O' Durst.
Hey guys, Will Durst here with a few choice words about the revelations of the first grand jury indictments in the Mueller investigation. Conspiracy against the United States. That's just one of the charges filed against the president's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort. He's also accused of money laundering, avoiding taxes, and being a smug SOB who makes Bernie Madoff look like a bleeding heart social worker. After pleading not guilty to all charges, Manafort is under house arrest with a $10 million bond, but Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller argued he should be remanded into custody as a flight risk because of extreme wealth, the severity of charges, his travel history, and the fact that the guy lies like a rug in his sleep. Nothing to keep him from running back to the Ukraine, where he still has good buddies and safety deposit boxes full of rubles and hryvnias. Because apparently what happens in Kiev stays in Kiev. Hell, his haircut represents an extreme threat to public safety. Another Trump foreign policy advisor, although lower down the food chain, George Papadopoulos, pled guilty to lying to the FBI, then was described in documents as a proactive cooperator, which has everybody in the Trump administration worried that he might have spent the last couple of months playing that popular FBI game, Dial a Co-Conspirator, while wearing a wire. The FBI's normal modus operandi concentrates on peripheral players, then offers plea deals, trying to flip them, working inward like termites of justice until they have an elevated position to take out the king. And you get the feeling the guy surrounding the president would drop a dime on him faster than a sailor at Carnival Midway the night before shipping out. Imagine right now that President Donald Trump is quaking like a Richter scale simulator in the back of a moving van speeding over railroad tracks. Mostly because, as the Carpenters legendarily told us, we have only just begun. For Succotash, I apologize for singing me, Will Durst.
Get on over to willdurst.com to get a line on his one-man show that's been extended, playing every Tuesday night at the Marsh Theater in San Francisco. Also where he's headlining with his comedy stylings, plus the big fat year-end kiss-off show he does every year. That'll be falling into place about now, so you can get times and places where that will be up on his home site, again, willdurst.com. Also, follow Will on Twitter at Will Durst. That is going to do it for Epi160 of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. The next installment is going to feature a bunch of clips from horror and sci-fi comedy movie soundcasts. Tyson and I had harvested like 10 clips, which I was going to use for a special show with the Monster Party Soundcast guys, but you know what? That show never happened. So, before those clips pass their expiration dates, I figured we better make use of them ourselves. Until next time, thanks for passing the Succotash. Now, Bill Haywatt, get us the hell out of here.
You've been listening to Succotash Clips, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast, with your host, Marc Hershon. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants and...
Imagine your company's name right here.
Find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on iTunes, on Stitcher Smart Radio, on SoundCloud, and on the Laughable app. You can also hear us streaming and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Succotash Show. Email us at
marc@succotashshow.com.
Or call into the Succotash hotline at our non-toll-free call number, 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
You can also upload clips from your favorite comedy soundcasts directly to us using our direct upload link at hightail.com/u/Succotash. Succotash is produced and engineered with the kind assistance of Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, home of the hit. Our associate producer is Tyson Sainer. Our musical director is Scott Carvey. Our booth assistant is Kenny Durges. Until next time, I am your loyal booth announcer, Bill Haywatt, reminding you to please pass the Succotash. Goodbye.